I have a plan for a company, and I'll donate and guide it from here. So and no one will own any money from it. So no one could get in trouble with the presidents. You have to get help though, because in other words, and I can help you guys because I measured it's discernible. We could all discern it. There's a breaching method at countries A through Z that wasn't sourced by A through Z. And what it did and does, it shows the identities of integrity and of non-integrity and the difference of that, where and how it needs to hide, how everyone had collusions with it. Speaking about things like black pupils, for example, or whites of eyes. These two colors that are the same color eyes that we have. That is also while simultaneously other species, even fish, have eyes that look like ours. There are qualities, aspects in nature about ourselves and as a species body that weren't invented by us, weren't invented by the other species bodies. We are showing a further hyper simultaneous. We are showing that we are distinct, non distinct, simultaneous per what is further slash hyper simultaneous too, in fact. This breaching method makes us understate things or overstate them. In other words, tactical ulterior how from nature does. Nature shows us that we have an special difference. That is right where it is too hot, it is not too hot, or it is not too cold. And then there are exceptions. Right where we are, where Earth's special difference is distinct from our own, but also non-distinct. And simultaneously, too, for that further hyper simultaneously projected to us, projected slash hyper projected to us. It is why we question. See, but it uses positive and negative value nature progressions in the phenomena generated by of how of its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that relative to how identities have relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, relativity slash hyper relativity, and value has relativity slash hyper relativity to positive and negative simultaneously in demonstration of this. And of each complete identity, semi-nature relationship simultaneously to what we could stay systems tactical ulterior from, but it demonstrates with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. More importantly than the physical is the physical, in other words, invisible but still discernible, and the hyper invisible but still discernible to the extent we can discern simultaneously with each subject. This is what we are actually capable of appreciating. See, campuses A through Z, they took this is, for example, one of the things necessary for where they employ jobs. And people make jobs value they are not. The campuses A through Z have been using criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, fact, tribute, nature, quality, aspects, and natures of logic as criminal insidiousness. I'm not a lawyer. Lawyers like Trantolo and other lawyers that have been putting advertisements on the networks. They have also with the intelligence next to them, the intelligence community next to Fox Connecticut News and next to WFS. Fox Connecticut News is in Hartford, Connecticut. No, right where there's a parking lot in the highways, and then the north end of Hartford, where there are beautiful homes, but then they were made 2 and 3 family homes. All the means to all the resources and costs of upkeeping homes and things like that, and not have all the traffic and all that stuff gone. All the including the social means to socialize gone while more people are stacking in, because this is how it was designed, tactically denatured the suburbs before America's founders were born, with slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, and where science had obligations to keep this and deal with what they call. So you guys have used with serious tactical ulterior from how nature uses it. want to argue about who calls what name to someone. Meanwhile, interbranch have their differences and roles with the rackets with them, putting fake things in databases. Increasingly in the Britain Superior Court, Hartford courts, and Connecticut's District Court has roles interstates with names on all the state corrections offices and all the state judicial branches with offices with child offenders who are putting predicate acts with facts, fake things in databases, fake ties, fake natures of ties to people, and uses of exceptions where they're pretending they don't realize. So the courts at the same, these are also people in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers the day of the attack. But and both sides of the cases in there, in the court itself, from inside the court, they post-dated legal, timely stamped legal papers and made them appear to be late. And then that was right before the World Trade Center attack in Manhattan. Then that proven, so that, in other words, it's recorded too. More was involved with that. They had WFSB attach me to fake conversations with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center attack. These are also names next to the campuses that are used to hide lie progressions, because this breaching method used collusions that no one wanted at all locations /S. And our founders communicated for us to understand that. And they did classify that not to be aware of how people used what everyone said, leaving out what they had to declassify about what they said. And you guys won't allow it, and you're getting away with it because of how the campuses were and are right now, reliant upon kids going home. They're wasting their time. In other words, forgiveness is because A through Z are guilty of blaming other things, others, ourselves, for what nature itself and America's founders communicated for us to blame on a human fact, human nature breaching method, the predicate acts with facts delivery system method, and or the criminal insidiousness nature delivery system method. And it's a difference racketeering method. See, in other words, we can discern this because we have black people's whites of eyes, the same color eyes, while we have at the same time while we have different color eyes, with the exceptions part. And in nature's identity is communicated to us about this. So you guys have the the hyper clear of reason polluting, and in other words, you keep disturbing, putting let's say there's not the metaphor of a pond. In other words, you walk in the pond, all the smoke, all the dust comes up some ponds, and you can't see anything in the water anymore. See, in other words, there are proofs that, for example, on the side, there are proofs that the beaver had shown Native Americans. And, because they were the last to become denatured at A through Z, leaving out per a name that's not A through Z, too. It has a method that effectively kept and keeps names A through Z, blaming other things, others, and or selves for things it caused past, things it keeps now active, and things to come. While they're speaking about economies, leaving out, in other words, when you have threats of natural disasters, let alone people killing each other, in other words, from America to Russia to Ukraine, there are quality aspects of nature about the suburbs that America's founders communicated, and nature itself communicated for us to understand, that are tactically denatured, designed for the torture, extortion, and fact-cheating nature slavery, therefore physical, of our founders, which are distinct from our presidents. But you guys won't allow honesty and sanity. You guys have delusions regarding the value of your arguments when you use the names of our presidents, like George Washington. And then you need to pretend other by valuing use of knowledge of good and evil to get over on correlation nature / hypercorrelation nature. In other words, the identity of all space / existence as nature's identity. It is equal identity of relativity to all parts of space nature as an identity relative to positive and negative simultaneously, where more and more positive is being made. But it also has earth when a temporary / lasting a special difference. And that's because it comes with how nature is showing us. It is more probable and demonstrable how nature's identity, to the extent we could discern, it comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. Simultaneously, equally, three ways increasingly as value. With any subject we could deal with properly, individually grouped or together. This is why how this is the identity that has the phenomenon three ways, three parts of time that are grouped as the extent of time that you know that was past, that you know that was true always. There's an extent now that you know there's active, a whole bunch of truths that you know are true simultaneously, actively. And there is for example, the value of the seasons. There is its identity. As that identity, again, that has totally distinct species bodies with quality aspects of nature, distinct but non-distinct and simultaneously / hyper simultaneous. So debates about relativity are used and were used. Criminally foreign influence / hypercriminally foreign influence and tactically delusions raw. For example, to measure and maintain the relativity of having black pupils, whites of eyes, and the relativity of the breaching method that assigned other communicated for nature by that, and the nature that assigned. Anyone who would complain about that, there's an extent our founders complained about it, but they had to hide their roles putting up the Constitution, forcing the other founders to have the Declaration of Independence in the plan that unfolded to allow them to have people agreed to be states together. Slavery was still entrenched, northern colonies and southern colonies. The debate about this has never been separated from criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Sensory roles for the breaching method, sensing for it if anyone uses short words with convictions properly regarding it, like regarding how we have black people's whites of eyes as evidence, regarding like what's debatable or not, regarding the value of the identities of the sciences expertise and the value of that, like especially economically. In other words, we know originally still, you step back and look, there's predicate acts with facts roles, needs and natures upon all locations sickly distinctly, and in responses to it too. This breaching method employs all sides fighting each other or helping each other exactly the way it needs to have criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and negative treatments and apparent motivations sustained until they are real. But still, even then, with this hyper additional controlling them remotely, black pupils. Earth's we could be systems tactical military than its own. We could stay that way, even if everyone agrees to it. Everyone says, oh, look, we've been putting all our energy into weapons and things like that, and we still have tactically denatured suburbs that were designed before cars. Suburbs! Anyone who, in other words, there are little kids that know, they don't know how to explain it, but they're going to learn. That when they hear people debate, like pretend that they can't discern, that there are people stacked upon in the cities and in the suburban / urban. In other words, because the homes were designed with slavery entrenched north and south. They had slaves in the houses too, because everyone was a slave. They had laws there. If you were found out, you heard someone speaking about building other outside of internationally monitored conversations, they would hurt you and everyone around you. If not kill you guys, no, everyone was tortured, extorted, fact, human nature, enslaved, therefore physically. Just like they would make one person, they would make people hurt each other as the fake sides they forged, as black and white, still speaking, as fake sides, still speaking without the black pupils, whites of eyes, still speaking without the species volume science method. Nature, too, is simultaneously showing us this distinct species body of individual bodies, humanity, as a species body, individual, of individual bodies, with all group differences being generated by its hyperdifference. That's showing us we could be systems other than its own, but that's as our special difference, as an extension of Earth's. That's why it's only been so long we've been this way. It hasn't wrecked Earth yet. Forced from here, least of Hades, as its negative identity of relationship to its complete identity of relationship to itself. We either, in other words, positive unity as even A through Z agree. In other words, you think the environment's going to get better with all these people stacked, and not even in the suburbs needs food and resources from other locations and from other names, tactically ulterior from how nature, when it's positive unto itself, shows us to appreciate such vaccines. The republic for which we stand relies upon pantheism, a science led by the identity of discernment. Capable of being here where the identity of the hyper-invisible is distinct from the invisible, but still discernible parts of speech. For example, and the other things that are invisible but still discernible, like criminal insidiousness nature itself, / hypercriminal insidiousness nature. A through Z, we have the people that have nuclear weapons pointed at each other, still in collusions with the World Trade Center attack. And while they're fighting each other, they're using words like extremism and like radical. In other words, as collusions with WFSB's World Trade Center predicate acts, and the Saudis too with them. And the difference, they don't even know, because there's other natures of industry, criminally foreign influence, other natures of predicate acts. Increasingly, the lawyers of the victims of the World Trade Center attack, having them speak as one body, they're using them to measure and maintain. They don't know a whole bunch of people tied to the name King, involved with an O'Brien family and with a Cololo family, with multiple police departments, and involved with WFSB and Fox Connecticut News, and with journalists next to them. Also on and off campuses involved with predicate acts, lawyers, mayors, their sources, all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the interbranch switching names and sequence interstates. The same ones who did that are international and intercities, have been putting fake things. In other words, I never had a word of conversation with Claudia Scalora. She's one of the ones involved interstates and intercities, with also police switching and forging names, Wethersfield Police, to have roles with state police and FBI, and co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with a whole bunch of people directly and indirectly involved with federal evidence crimes that were timed collusions with connected home break-ins. And identity theft, fraud, slaying, pretending passions and emotions too on the Facebook. That's why they block people's, steal people's Facebook page and lie about their motivations. They have courts. They have Harper Courts, Connecticut District Court, and the Britain Superior Court, before and after the World Trade Center attack, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed all kinds of natures of corruption and collusion with predicate acts next to the campuses, intercities involved with them, with their roles with World Trade Center predicate acts, including Sins to Hide It with WFSB, while at the same time they were forcing a child abuser leader of kids, and more medical and sexual ones, and the court switching names and forging names, and they've been stacking fake falsified police reports through time. Increasingly, people tied to a Christopher Cullen and his family have roles with mayors and overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and unmarked police forms that are not legitimately, with their acting professors too, involved with WTNH, with predicate acts, with names involved with corners of streets, like on Church Street in Old Wethersfield. Increasingly involved with predicate acts with campuses with those same names, with the news locations, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and the interbranch are not identifying themselves. I've asked many times Judge Napolitano through typing on his live streams. You should watch Judge Napolitano's live streams too before the world blows up, so you guys understand it's serious. But in other words, you guys, all these things are connected because all these countries in the news. There's a Dr. Shub who has a family member who works with one of the probate courts. Probate courts are recorded involved with all kinds of predicate acts with facts against elderly and against veterans as their roles with that method /S that is sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly against all Americans, but is sickly distinctly against the New Yorkers. In other words, so those people stacked upon in New York City, vertically and horizontally, then they go to campuses that blame other things, others ourselves, for things our founders told us to blame on the breaching method, the predicate acts with facts delivery system method, and or the criminal insidiousness nature delivery system method, and the difference of that too. This breaching method measures and maintains names on all sides of cases in the formal law, names in the private ones, their sources, their family members, their neighbors, the news, the names, the intelligence next to the news, all kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts at the same time. They all kept needing to do whatever to force the quality of fact-sheeping nature. Collusions like with motivations, narratives too, in nature is increasingly used since founding to keep the motivations roles and narratives as used by the breaching method from being discerned. Not one has learned vaccines. So in other words, they use wire and mail crime methods. They change and fake what's digitally recorded. There's a principal being who is one of the ones involved with digital crimes, way worse than just upskirt pictures with people at shopping centers and malls, in the military. And there's family members with the name Smith and Collo that live near me, with the police that brought their names up in confessions. A guy forced himself through my door, and he confessed the name Scalora involved with him. I don't know what the heck he was talking about. I didn't respond. Then he gave me a card. I don't know what happened to his card too. So the other officers had been switching names before and after to that, anyways. Roles. In other words, these are people. Wethersfield Police, with retired police chiefs, they have roles with all sides of Central Connecticut State University since before I ever went there. It has something to do with their roles with that, and names all along, and tied to names all along Hangdog Lane and Two Rod Highway, where it runs into Hangdog Lane, and both those streets connect to, for example, Hangdog Lane connects to Route 3. One of the conjunctions to it is the state judicial branch offices, and Two Rod Highway has conjunction to the Berlin Turnpike, which is that spot is increasingly being and having been brought up by people tied to probate court judges, family members, who have roles with the people involved right now with the wire crime acts and methods and mail crimes, falsified police reports, with the Wethersfield Police, improving child abusers, leaders of kids. They had and more extended family members also roles with, and some untimely deaths, and increasing ties to confessions to me from strangers that have connected. In other words, communicating more than they all appear to only be confessing. Like a Robert Rodriguez brought up the name Scalora and his roles with an untimely death and some dentists associated with them. And I had perfect teeth at the time. In other words, I was tortured till I didn't speak with them. They pretended I had conversations with and made all kinds of fake things to use investigators remotely at Hartford Hospital. A Leahy family has roles with the C.M. Paglione family and with his educators and with people that with the military and the intelligence, foreign and domestic, influenced him to attach me to fake locations, fake ties to him and his brother, fake nature ties to them. They influenced the Paul Zano to walk in the high school with me. To time, in other words, they were influenced to sit back and let me walk in first with my Paul Zano next to me. And they had a cop waiting there because they're putting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me with the Paul Zano. I never had anything to do with the Paul Zano. They made him sit next to me one time in a thing. In other words, they may try to make a fake exceptions. Paul Zano has roles interstates like with Rhode Island, involved with some prosecutors and judges and overt criminal enterprises and people on and off Central Connecticut State University with Afghan leaders and kids. And my neighbors involved with them, with the town offices where the Wethersfield Police Department used to be, and where it is now, and with the Joshua Julian involved with digital crimes, with whiting forensics, with a principal sex offender. He has more roles of more natures of organized crime with the kids, and people tied to a Joshua Julian who was pretending he partied with me on Facebook as one of the people also recorded confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by a Mark Violet and a Ray Colo involved with them with spots next to and people next to the state judicial branch offices. And they're educators with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Also with people all along Route 175 and Route 3. In other words, I never had a class with Mark Violet or Mike Violet in my life. I don't even know they have roles with the buildings next to the state capitol is also one of the things that connects the people involved with the wire crimes of the Wethersfield Police, switching and forging names, and with the courts that are refusing to identify themselves and get on paper legitimately because they've been using the courts criminally pointed. They use them need to hide live progressions at the same time as collusion, the same need to self-value, the same sequence shifts. You know, also they have delusions that are relative here because they have some black KKK theme, Latino theme. They have some Mendez police that have roles with falsified police for wire crime acts and methods when I was a kid, now as an adult. They attached me to fake conversations with, I had a word of conversation inside the Wethersfield Police Department. They attached me a sentence I said to my Saudi friend, one of the Mendez brothers. One of them switches names too. I don't know, they both do. Well, there's an Eric Mendez, and he has an older brother who is reportedly his older brother. Now, we're knowing each other. There's ones with the name DeMoro, also involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and involved with them at the state judicial branch offices with a Mr. Potter and a Potter family associated with also with a Chet Casper and a Casper family has roles with identity theft, fraud, slandering. I never had a class with him in my life. He's one of the ones involved with Hangdog Lane and Two Rod Highway and its conjunctions, like the Route 3, and with a Pete. That also I never had a class with him either. He's been planting evidences. These are intelligence families that are criminally foreign influence or roles with them. Also with Old Town Cafe and the Charlie Bowes and their roles next to Fox Connecticut News and the buildings next to it. Also with the Enzo Fienza and people on the Two Rod Highway. They said his name. He said his name Allegro. Involved with them with a Dillon family, a whole bunch of people tied to a Kevin Dillon and Anna Dillon and a Thomas Dillon are further involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids and people with the name Lombardo at Hartford Hospital too. With people it has something to do with their roles, also with the Wethersfield Community Center and all sides of it. There's a Jody Pierce. I don't know at all. I didn't respond to her. I never had a conversation with her. She sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm roles with a DeMoro and a Paul Aptet and a Fred Gruzet recorded involved with predicate acts with people from other schools planting evidences at my schools with the Wethersfield police chiefs' families and intimate ties and people with all kinds of natures of conjunctions to them. They've also the same ones have been planting evidences on all sides of my house. My algebra teacher, Miss Riley, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with some Jewish narratives with a neighbor of mine where they make fights between people and they put smoke that came through the opposite way in my chimney right when he was on the right timing when he was on the chimney of the neighbor next to me. There's an Inspector Mike who has been planting evidence on all sides of my house with that. In the past, neighbors said, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles of predicate acts on Trinity College with a Joshua Stryker who also pretended I never saw him in my area in my life. Jeremy Grohl said he was involved with them with the Judge Smith and other people there's also a Subby Bajario further involved with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, as one of the ones involved with the sides of community center with Jeremy Grohl through time, and his roles with my neighbor. I don't know where he lives now, Ray Cololo, and the spots where he lived involved with them. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusion as well. A whole bunch of state police families, interstates involved with the names Cololo and Jensen, also planting evidence on all sides of my house with state police families and foreign families, timed collusions, and his roles with various natures of federal criminals before they were caught, and as some as co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and their neighbors. Their roles, in other words, as ones increasingly involved with the spots next to Hartford Hospital, as names that were planting evidences with names next to the campus's intercities, including all ages and natures of them. The only time I ever saw Eric Jensen on a campus in my life, he was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, influenced to cover up sequence shifts that I recorded before and after that. In other words, predicate acts with facts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, putting fake ties, fake natures of ties. He recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He also has roles with that, with names on off Two-Rod Highway, on off Hangdog Lane, on Two-Rod Highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane too. In other words, the difference of that. And these are streets that are conjunctive to Route 3 going by the state judicial branch offices. Weathersfield Pizza has wire crimes with Weathersfield police that have been fabricating evidences with them, and roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders with people at Central Connecticut State University, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with a what's his name? No, I only know his name through others. I was in my class with me. I never had one word of conversation with him. In other words, a Paul Zano or Ray Cololo have roles with I forgot his name. He might be married to a Maria Fazzino, and I never saw her. And I only knew her name repeated to me by a Mark Violet when I was a sophomore. In other words, I met him before that, and then I had a girlfriend for a year. No, I had nothing to do with them. Then they were covering live progressions because these people are putting fake ties, fake natures of ties. These people are people that were shown that they have criminally foreign influence readings of law, of statutes of precedent. And they were shown that they have criminally foreign influence readings of uses of words and values like peer. And they're shown they need to hide it at other locations by uses of these little tricks. Increasingly, there are people tied to neighbors of a Perone family. I don't know if they even live there anymore, and themselves are increasingly involved with Fox Connecticut News, with journalists at next to WFSB, WTNH too. They have wire crime acts and methods, and they're pretending it's personal. So this is a method that keeps roles with the natures of industries. See, this is a nature that employed torture, extortion, slavery method roles. People that really can't speak for value properly, or otherwise they would learn the difference between value / nature's value and nature as value / value as nature, as we could observe. But we need a quality of fact-shaping nature that first recognizes this value as it is being as it is an element of the complete identity of all space / existence, where and how we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. Nature is communicating to us about difference. Nature is, in other words, observable, discernible to us. It's hyper difference. It is why we need to appreciate more than one word for a verb. It is why the participle natures are grouped. Present participle or past participle, while not. But anyway, for example, appreciation of what a gerund is appreciation of what a present participle is, which is another name for a verb. This is the same volume science that is grouped also. In other words, is human species individual body of individual bodies with all grouped differences, again being slash different, the hyper difference. Just like all parts of your body have a semi-nature relationship to your complete identity, simultaneously slash hyper simultaneously, yeah, we can ignore, we can make positive value nature systems tactical ulterior from its own, but it will demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures individually, grouped, and all together. Criminal insidiousness nature stands regarding the nature of debate regarding the suits and ties, the counters or the exceptions. Because in other words, this breaching method showed well, the way it uses remotely everyone, or sensing everyone through the wrong, even if it is majority of people, even if it is everyone. All groupings of the most powerful leaders in the world, even they come together. In other words, and everyone agrees to help them. If we state systems tactical ulterior, will continue to demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. It is inseparable, in other words, from the breaching. The breaching method is inseparable from the answer slash S of what caused so much pollution to be in the oceans, in the fish itself, in the fish themselves. I'm saying, in other words, the fish itself is the way we look at it. As systems that, in other words, we have fresh water, all put underground, all tactically denatured above the ground. Also poisoned life forms. You guys let the breaching method teach you. You guys let the breaching method control calmness or aggression. In other words, that's why they switch and forge names. They put their little punks on Facebook. They have the difference between the agency's roles with Facebook, even the difference between the FBI, criminally foreign influence with Facebook, the courts, predicate acts, or the CIA. Because while you guys go a little further into it, in other words, I minded my business. You guys brought up the CIA with a Kelly Kaczmarek. Eric Jensen gave me the means to know how to pronounce her name. Has something to do with his roles with his educators, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts, and with names involved with probate court judges, involved with torture, extortion, and slavery of elderly and veterans' homes. Know how the veterans' homes are built with that huge design, like the poverty in New York City. Only allowed to be that because the breaching method measures and maintains before cars. The breaching method only allowed the suburbs designed the way they are. They had laws that were, if you were even found out speaking about building infrastructure or other outside of internationally monitored conversations, they hurt, tortured, killed, and did worse to you and everyone around you just because you heard people speak about it and you didn't tell them. That's how they, in other words, think about what was entrenched. Think about what you defend when you're trying to defend, when you're trying to force people to take area issues like color seriously. You guys are using it for a game racket. The same, in other words, the same way the breaching method, or the counters too, or the exceptions, all used big exceptions, self-value. You guys have a nature debate, criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw fact, human nature, quality aspects of natures, locations, areas, and states, everywhere the species bodies go, lives, is. You guys are forcing economics to be valued that they are not. It's increasingly forcing people to charge themselves, pretending not even realizing too. We can do in other words. The reason there's negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and keeping that, and we're kept blamed on other things, others ourselves so long, it made all identities of integrity reliant upon that. That's really why there's excuse me, why there are problems with the cities, immigration, and all these different transnational and interstates criminal enterprises, criminal insidiousness natures. Because with the counters to it are predicate acts. There's a Sandy Hook prison. A whole bunch of people on off the state corrections offices have roles with predicate acts with federal evidence crime acts and methods at the boxing gyms with the KKK, black themed, Latino themed, Italian themed, identity theft, fraud, slanders clicks, interbranch. They're black and white themed per the states. Women judges as the ones involved with the police forging and switching names. Their sources, collusions with them, including as ones with Central Connecticut State University increasingly has a detective Samuda involved with the FBI and courts family members in foreign countries in overt criminal enterprises and more child offenders, leaders of the kids, including sexual, medical, and legal at the same time. These are also people that a whole bunch of people on off the state corrections offices, which is on a town line. And the difference between the ones next to it or driving by when they make confessions relative, as their roles with the ones increasingly Weathersfield police chiefs retired, like a police chief Cintron, is one of the ones recorded. People said that he's involved with a Mayao family and people with the South Sibiello. There's a South Sibiello who was in my fourth grade class. Increasingly, people tied to him have been covering up lie progressions. His roles with the former Mayor Gold and other mayors with the intelligence community have been planting evidences at the sides of parks, at roles with people at the sides of body dumping spots. And there were timed use/s of those things when they're brought up at the same time. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw use/s of databases and of database identities of relativity to ourselves. We're going to examine how people play with the theory of relativity. We're going to examine how people use the knowledge of good and evil. In other words, the identity of English itself is greater, simultaneously greater than and more finite than, and with active relativity to, from, as, with, and for our answers than math or these other sciences. It's different, everyone forces everyone with like group think is one of the praises that we were told caused the World Trade Center attack. That's how they put right in place still. Roles with that group think with defenses of logics and natures using words like extremism and radical. And exceptions show the same thing too. Because you guys are shown by the breaching method, you have to hide how you are faking. How you work using the exception nature, tactical terror from how nature does. That's one of the things you're doing. Ray Colo has been influenced to ask me questions for his roles with the intelligence community since I was a kid, and they barely know him. No, in the context when I do, because he's the ones increasingly with the names like a Joshua Julian, who's involved with identity theft frauds, pretending he partied with me too. These are also people that pretend that others use drugs and alcohol where they didn't. And they try to make exceptions. They change it, make it what it is. Increasingly, people tied to a Ray Colo at Trinity College. I don't know their names. A whole bunch of them and his educators. A Mr. Neville. There's a Eric Olson and a Matt Olson, who have roles with the intelligence, state police families, and different natures of intelligence like FBI and foreign countries like Afghan leaders and kids. People from Cuba, also involved with people named Scalora with the World Trade Center attack, and then with the torture in Cuba, and their roles with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes, with the corrections offices and judicial branch offices, which are also medical crimes, and all kinds of natures of organized crime, and delusions, raw people. And they have increasingly, Harvard Hospital brought up the name Casper to me with one of their patients involved with some doctors who did a little trick to make it look like in other words, a conversation with the doctor that never was. They switched the doctor's name and had some kid tied to the Smith family. Jamie Smith, David Smith, and their mother has roles with the intelligence community at the Weathersfield town offices, with people involved with the judicial branch offices and the corrections offices, planting evidence on my sides of my house. And they have their Facebook pages involved. Also with the Joshua Schumack is one of the ones involved with the Mark Violet. A whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital tied to Mark Violet and the intelligence family with the FBI and with the courts involved, planting identity theft, fraud, slanders. Let's get them on paper, one name and sequence. And there's the father of a Mike Delafera and Chris Delafera, and I don't know their other brothers' names. They spied on me. I barely know them. They tried to paint. They like you. It has something to do with the Roosevelt Fire campuses and Russians. There was a Russian in my 6th grade class with the name Peruta, who also got increasingly keeps getting brought demonstrating involvements. It has something to do with their roles with Tim O'Brien and a Ray Collusion with the corners of the street on Highcrest Street. And they affected bullshit with behind my back with their educators too. In other words, I never even saw them on my campuses. The only exception was to them playing fake exception. Like a Tim O'Brien. I'm not even going to repeat how he said it because it didn't even make sense. If a little kid did it, they'll think the kid's too immature to act properly. In other words, that he was like is that with his voice. It's a little trick they did. He was from another classroom to make it look like we spoke before that. The same thing a former Mayor Gold did. Increasingly, people with whiting forensics have a former Mayor Gold and have a Phil Collusion and a Bob Chase involved with them with all kinds of natures of organized crime and federal evidences crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and relative delusions. So these are all a bunch of things and murders and untimely deaths that were brought up at the same time. And then, in other words, these are also police departments that Weathersfield police pretended I had a conversation with them as a kid and then as an adult. Sickly, distinctly, as a kid, I wasn't even in there. As an adult, I was in there for 1 second. In other words, in the police report, they have no police report still. They're switching their names still. So they have more than one falsified police report for each arrest. Too. That's another phenomenon involved here. We're generating a whole bunch of other phenomena. We're also remote uses of the identities of the law, private too. There's a Trantola and Trantola involved, framing issues with the judges and prosecutors, all kinds of scams with the intelligence community. Fear God for them, but get them on paper with the interbranch forging and switching names and refusing to identify themselves legitimately, and with the news with identity theft, fraud, slanders, timed collusions with them, because a whole bunch of other countries are involved. A whole bunch of people tied to WFSB had roles with the Saudi attackers, per worse. Years before it, as the ones that had something to do with the roles with the judicial and corrections offices, with names acting behind people's backs and with their educators, putting fake recorded audio and video on campuses too. That's recorded. You're going to observe this, people. Follow mandated law for your states.